Hello everybody, good morning Year 5 and 6. It's Miss Jennings here and I'm going to be delivering your Monday English lesson today. So our date today is Monday the 1st of February and it's 2021. Okay, and our learning intention or learning question today is, can I identify features of a formal letter? Okay, so I know last week you were looking at non-chronological reports with Miss Kalia. So you might have identified some formal features for your reports, but this week, we're going to be focusing on formal features within letters, okay? So I've got my kind of checklist here of the key features that we're going to be looking at today. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the layout of a letter, of a formal letter. We're going to be looking at who we are writing to, okay, and how we write that. We're going to be looking at how to begin a letter, a formal letter. We're going to be looking at the tone and the language that we use in formal letter writing. We're going to be looking at paragraphs, how to split our letter up into paragraphs. We're going to be looking at the closing statement, how to write a closing statement, and also how we end a formal letter. Okay, so I've got a letter here that we're going to look at together, and I'm going to keep my checklist here next to me. So as you can see here, my features are all colour-coded, okay? And I've got lots of pens, pencils and highlighters here that I'm going to use, okay, throughout this video to annotate, okay, and label where I find the features within this letter here. Okay, so the first thing on my list is layout. Okay, so what you will notice with any formal letter is that the person who has written the letter, okay, in this case it's Miss Kalia, their address is always on the top right hand side of the page. And then directly below that, you'll find the date that the letter was written. So this one was written a little while ago in 2014. Okay, and then just below the date that the letter is written will be the letter of the recipient, so the person who is receiving the letter. Okay, so in this particular case, the address is the same because Miss Kalia wrote the letter and she's written the letter to Mr. Fitter. Okay, so we've got the school address, the old school address actually. So I've labelled that one the writer's address and the one down here on the left, the recipient's address. And I'm just going to write here date the letter was written. Okay, what's next on my list? So who you are writing to. If you know who you are writing to, and in this case Miss Kalia did, it was Mr. Fitter, then you can use their name. Okay, so dear Mr. Fitter. If you don't know the person, then you can write dear sir or madam. It's also important to remember to use a comma, okay, after their name, so either after Mr. Fitter, comma, or dear sir / madam, comma. Okay, so next on our list to look at is the beginning of your letter, how your letter starts. Okay, so in this particular letter, our very first sentence says, I am writing to you on behalf of our class. The next sentence says, we want to hold another Macmillan coffee morning on the 26th of September and are hoping that you will allow us to do this. Okay, so my first sentence tells me who the letter is from, and the second sentence tells me what the letter is going to be about, okay, and in this case it's asking Mr. Fitter whether we can hold another Macmillan coffee morning. So in formal letter writing, our first sentence or first couple of sentences is always detailing what the letter is going to be about or why the letter has been written, okay. Before we continue with our list, let's read through the rest of the letter together. Okay, so knowing you are aware of Macmillan and all the fantastic work they do to support cancer sufferers and their families, We are sure that you will have no objections, especially after our previous successful events. Whilst we appreciate the importance of children being in the classroom learning, particularly given the new curriculum, we believe that we could build lots of maths and English activities into the planning of the event, bringing these subjects into real-life situations. In addition, we understand you may be concerned about the hall being clear in time for the serving of lunch. However, we could plan an early start for parents dropping off their children and will ensure that the hall is immaculate by lunchtime. As well as provide the children with valuable real-life learning, it will also provide their families an opportunity to visit the school in an informal situation. How could you refuse such a worthy cause the chance to boost their much-needed funds? We look forward to hearing from you soon. Yours sincerely, Miss Carlia, on behalf of our class. Okay, so let's go back to our features on our checklist. So next on our list is tone and language. Now this is a really important one, especially in a formal letter writing scenario. This first paragraph is written quite formally, well the whole letter is, but so let's read through it again. I am writing to you on behalf of our class. We want to hold another Macmillan Coffee Morning on the 26th of September and are hoping that you will allow us to do this. Okay, so that's the class asking Mr. Fitter's permission in a very kind of polite and professional manner. So here's one that I've written before, okay, in a less formal way. So let's have a look at the difference. Our class think we should put on a Macmillan Coffee Morning on the 26th of September. Will you let us? Now, it kind of is asking Mr. Fitter the same thing, isn't it? But it's a bit too casual, really, isn't it? Not really appropriate for a letter to a head teacher. I think particularly the word behalf. So I am writing to you on behalf of our class. It's quite a formal way to open the letter. And we want to hold another Macmillan Coffee Morning on the 26th of September and are hoping that you will allow us to do this. Okay, so I think the word hoping you will allow. Okay, let's have a look at another example. So let's go down to this paragraph here. So again, it's written in a very formal way. So in addition, we understand you may be concerned about the hall being clear in time for serving of lunch. However, we could plan an early start for parents dropping off their children and will ensure the hall is immaculate by lunchtime. Okay, so we understand is quite a formal way to kind of open this paragraph, and also having a varied sentence opener helps as well. You may be concerned, okay, another word for concerned might be worried, but they've chosen to use the word concerned in this letter, about the hall being clear in time for serving of lunch. Okay, so serving of lunch, that's quite a formal way to say lunchtime, isn't it? However, we could plan an early start for parents dropping off their children and will ensure, okay? That we could just say, you know, we'll make sure that the hall's ready, but instead they've used the word ensure, that the hall is immaculate, okay? That's a lovely word, isn't it? Immaculate. We could just have used the word clean there. We'll make sure that the hall's clean by lunchtime. So here's another example that I've written, okay? So this is a different version of this paragraph here. So instead of in addition, I've used the word also. Also, we know you might worry, instead of concern, okay? We know you might worry about the hall being clear for lunchtime. Clear for lunchtime instead of for the serving of lunch. But we could start the school day early to make sure the hall is ready for lunchtime, okay? So we could start the school day early to make sure, instead of ensure, that the hall is ready in time, instead of the hall is immaculate for lunchtime. Okay, so can you see those slight differences that really take a letter from being quite casual, like this example is here, to being quite formal? Okay, so it's all about the vocabulary that you choose. Next on our list is paragraphs. Okay, so how many paragraphs do we have here? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I'm just going to label those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, of course, all of our paragraphs link together because they're all in the same letter. So they kind of all flow together, but they all have a slightly different purpose. Okay, let's have a closer look, shall we? So our paragraph 1 that we've read through before, we've said already, haven't we, that this is kind of the why. Why are we writing this letter? Okay, that's kind of the purpose of paragraph 1. When you're writing your own letters, your paragraph 1 needs to explain what you're kind of asking for and why you're writing the letter. Paragraph 2. Knowing you are aware of Macmillan and all the fantastic work they do to support cancer sufferers and their families, we are sure that you will have no objections, especially after our previous successful events. So I would say that this paragraph is all about the background. Okay, it's kind of giving background information, okay, about what, in this scenario, it's about that they've already held a Macmillan coffee morning and they're asking to do another one. Okay, moving on to paragraph 3 and paragraph 4, because I think these two link together a little bit. So let's read through them. Whilst we appreciate the importance of being in the class, of children being in the classroom learning, particularly given the new curriculum, we believe that we can build lots of maths and English activities into the planning of the event, bringing these subjects into real-life situations. So often, in formal and persuasive letter writing, the writer can preempt, and preempt means to almost pre-think, okay, what the concerns might be of the reader. So in this letter, we're asking Mr. Fitter if we can hold another Macmillan coffee morning, and we understand that he might have some concerns about why we can't do that. So our class and Miss Carlia are preempting what his concerns might be and addressing them, okay, before he has the chance to express the concerns himself. Okay, and this carries on into paragraph 4. So, in addition, we understand you may be concerned about the hall being cleared in time for lunch. So I would say that paragraph 4 is kind of preempting Mr. Fitter's concerns about the school day, the kind of logistics of the day and how the timings of the day would work. And paragraph 3 is preempting concerns about the learning and the education of the children and the learning that they might miss. Okay, so I'm going to label this preempt concerns. Okay, and that actually brings us on to point 6, doesn't it, of our features checklist. So closing statement. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight that there. So as we said, a closing statement rounds off the letter nicely. Okay, and it's a really good opportunity to provide an action for the reader. So our reader, as we know, is Mr. Fitter, and the action we're asking him to do is to respond to us. Okay, so we look forward to hearing from you soon. We're asking him to reply to our letter. Okay, and so that brings us on to point 7, our last point on our checklist, which is ending the letter. So this letter has been ended with yours sincerely. Now, do we know why we have ended the letter with yours sincerely and not yours faithfully? So we use yours sincerely when you know the person. Okay, when you know the person you're writing to. We'll use yours faithfully when you don't know the person. Okay, because you are responding, you're asking them to respond in faith because you don't know their name. Okay, so I'm just going to say when you don't know the person. Okay, and then underneath that, Miss Carlia has signed it off, Miss Carlia on behalf of our class. So one last thing I want us to look at today in our letter is the use of modal verbs. So I've got some examples of modal verbs here. So should, would, could, might, may, will, can, must. Okay, so modal verbs indicate how likely something is to happen or not. Okay, so I've got some sentences here. So Nan said we might go to the park. Okay, or Nan said we will go to the park. Can you see how just changing the word from might to will really changes how likely it is that we'll get to go to the park? Okay, which of those do you think is more likely to happen? Do you think you're more likely to go if Nan says might or if Nan says will? That's right, I agree. I think we're more likely to go to the park if Nan says will. Okay, and modal verbs are something that you can use in your formal letter writing. Okay, because they're a kind of a way to persuade the person that you're writing to encourage them to agree with the outcome that you want. Okay, so in this case, our class wanted Mr. Fitter to agree to the Macmillan coffee morning. Let's go back to, I think, paragraph 4. Okay, let's have a look at a few modal verbs together. In addition, we understand you may be concerned. Oh, may. That's a modal verb, isn't it? You may be concerned about the hall being clear in time for the serving of lunch. However, we could, oh, that's another one. We could plan an early start for parents dropping off their children. And we will ensure that the hall is immaculate by lunchtime. Okay, so at the start of that paragraph, our class have preempted that Mr. Fitter may be concerned, okay, about the hall being clear. So they've used that modal verb to suggest, because they don't know for sure, he might not definitely be concerned that the hall needs to be clear for lunch, but it may be a concern to him. So they've preempted that with their language here. Okay, what about this next one? However, we could plan an early start for parents dropping off their children. So could, again, could has been used here to suggest a solution to Mr. Fitter's concern. Okay, so it's always a good idea to come with a solution to a problem that the person reading your letter might have. So if you're trying to persuade them of something, if you can bring them a solution to what might be a problem, you might be more likely to get them to agree with you. Okay, what about this last one? And will ensure that the hall is immaculate by lunchtime. Okay, so our class have used the word will. Okay, so we will definitely ensure that the hall is immaculate by lunchtime. I think that should really hopefully convince Mr. Fitter that this is a good idea. Okay, so we've worked through our whole letter now, and we've worked through our formal features checklist. So now I'd like you to have a go, okay? Continue going through this letter and see if you can find any more modal verbs, okay? I want you to have a look to see if you can find any more, because we've only looked at one paragraph here. So I'd like you to see if you can find any more modal verbs in the other paragraphs. And also see if you can identify some more examples of formal tone and formal language used within this letter. Okay. And then after that, to finish off today's lesson, there's one more letter on the blog for you to have a look at. Okay, so this one is to Mr. Hunter, and it is from Jack Mason, who is a Year 6 pupil. Okay, and you can see some bits of the letter here are written in bold. Okay, and there are also some slashes here. So when we have a slash like this, it means that you either need to choose one or the other. Okay, so I thought I'd write, or I am writing to complain about. Okay, so in this activity, what I would like you to do is to read through this letter, and wherever there's some bold writing and a slash, okay, like here, I would like you to choose which one of the two options is the more formal. Okay, so let's do the first paragraph together. So I thought I'd write, or I am writing to complain. So it would either be I thought I'd write to complain about, or I am writing to complain about. Well, I definitely think that the second one is more formal. Okay, so I'm going to cross out the first one. Okay, let's move on. So I am writing to complain about the state of the yard or the condition of the playground. So I don't think the word state is particularly formal. So again, I'm going to cross out the first one and I'm going to use condition of the playground, because I think condition is quite a formal way to say that maybe the playground is in quite bad condition. Okay, my next sentence. Over the last 2 weeks, I have noticed loads of rubbish or a great deal of litter. I think the word loads is quite informal, it's quite casual, isn't it, the word loads? So again, I'm going to cross out that one there and I'm going to keep a great deal of litter. So let's have a read back through of that paragraph now using my formal choices. Okay, so I am writing to complain about the condition of the playground. Over the past 2 weeks, oops, I've crossed out too much there, haven't I? Over the past 2 weeks, I have noticed a great deal of litter. Okay, so I should have only crossed out this bit here. Okay, so over the past 2 weeks, I have noticed a great deal of litter. Okay, whereas if I'd picked the other option, it would read, I thought I'd write to complain about the state of the yard. Over the past 2 weeks, I've noticed loads of rubbish. Okay, can you see the difference there? Just using slightly different language, okay, it really changes the tone of a letter. Okay, so carry on reading through this letter and I want you to carry on crossing out what you think is informal. Okay, so then you'll end up with a completely formal letter by the end. Okay, good luck.